We begin at a base known as Area 51. A man named Albert performs a countdown to activate a mysterious portal. Then we are taken to a strange world inhabited by grotesque creatures. One of them, larger and more imposing, appears, crushing another while an army of smaller creatures approaches. Soon after, Albert talks to Doug, the head of the operation. Albert expresses his concerns about strange movements detected at the portals, but Doug dismisses the warnings. He reveals that he plans to send his son, Trent, to one of the facilities on the other side. Albert tries to warn him about the risks, but Doug insists, highlighting Trent's enthusiasm for the mission. To reassure Albert, Doug mentions that Nolan will also accompany his son on the journey. Next, we see Trent talking to Jenny, who does not hide her dissatisfaction in saying that he has done nothing to deserve that spot. Trent listens without reacting, aware that she is right. At that moment, Nolan enters the room and informs them that Doug wants to speak to both of them. Then Nolan takes the young people to a secret room where he begins to recount the history of the studies conducted over the past years. He reveals that in 1951, a frequency coming from a planet with signs of intelligent life was detected. Since then, they have conducted several tests through the portals, sending transfer emitters to that world. However, all devices sent were disintegrated in the process. Only through one of the portals did an emitter manage to cross successfully, but it never returned. Then the scene shifts, and we meet two women inside a nightclub who are pickpocketing the customers. One of the targets is a man named Colt, and soon one of the women approaches him to chat. Unbeknownst to him, Colt also has his wallet stolen and discreetly passed to the thief's partner. Then we return to the military base, and shortly after, Doug enters the room, greets Jenny, and invites the two young people to accompany him to the observation room, where they can see one of the portals up close. There, Doug explains that Albert has a theory that each year the portals are intensifying and that this may indicate a possible invasion. Suddenly, the portal begins to behave unpredictably, reaching critical levels. Nolan observes everything closely and admits that Albert was right about the risks. The portal then changes color, and before everyone, a monstrous creature begins to emerge from within it. Nolan approaches for a better look, but is surprised and ends up being swallowed by the creature, causing total panic at the base. The military opens fire, but more creatures emerge and start devouring everyone they find. Doug, Trent, and Jenny manage to escape just in time, but soon the creatures break through the containment of the underground base and begin to chase the group, sending several smaller forms after the car. Chaos reigns at Area 51, and the gunfire seems pointless against the approaching horde. Doug drives the young people to an old military bunker nearby. Jenny, desperate, tries to call her parents, but the portals are interfering with communications, making any contact impossible. Soon, the creatures reach the city and start attacking civilians. The trio runs to the abandoned old base in search of shelter in the bunker. Upon arriving, they find Lori, Doug's wife, already climbing the bunker stairs. They also find a man and two women, one of whom is in poor condition. Lori promptly approaches to help her. Suddenly, a voice comes through the security cameras, warning that this is a restricted area. Doug identifies himself as the head of secret operations at Area 51. The man replies that they can enter, but the civilians must stay outside. Doug refuses the condition and demands that the door be opened immediately. Before they can respond, everyone hears a noise from outside. The military quickly opens the door and everyone rushes in as a huge creature lurks outside. The soldiers try to contain it with gunfire, but soon retreat back into the base. Next, Doug is taken to meet Lieutenant Brian, who quickly shows his dislike for the presence of so many people in the bunker. Doug explains that the portal showing results is undergoing critical changes, and that shortly after this, the creatures emerged that completely destroyed Area 51. Brian does not like the idea of having more people to feed in the face of a potential apocalypse, but even begrudgingly, he agrees to keep them there. Meanwhile, Trent and Jenny are in the bathroom. Trent tries to calm her down as she is very worried about her parents and cannot get a signal on her phone. The young man manages to distract Jenny for a moment and even offers a chocolate bar. In the dorms, Helen, the sick woman, hides her condition, fearing they will be expelled from the shelter. When Elaine goes in search of medications, we see a basin full of parasites next to the bed. Then, The military manages to tune in to the correct frequency so that Jenny can talk to her parents. She begins to relay the bunker's location, but the transmission is abruptly cut off. One of the military men says that it's better for her to give up, as her parents are probably already dead. In a moment of anger and frustration, Jenny blames Doug for everything that is happening, and he silently accepts the accusations without contesting. However, he states that he will keep his promise, saying that there is a nearby military base, and he himself will go there personally, since Jenny managed to relay the location to her parents before the communication was cut off, and he believes there is still a chance to find them. Trent goes to his father with tears in his eyes, pleading for him not to leave. Doug says he cannot simply turn his back on innocent people. Lori calms her son and asks Doug to come back soon. Just as he is about to leave, two soldiers decide to go along. Soon, the two military men, along with Doug, advance towards the exit and manage to get into the car. As soon as they leave, a creature appears. Trent and Brian have a brief conversation, and Brian gently comforts the boy. He says everything will be all right and tells him to go to Jenny's arms. Soon after, we return to the trio in the car heading to the military base. They soon arrive at the site, but find no one, and Doug warns them to stay alert. We see that the creature from before has followed them to the military installation. Meanwhile, the young people have a conversation and wonder how things got to this level. And to pass the time, Jenny suggests they play cards. Doug and the soldiers continue to move through the base, hearing a noise, but pushing forward. The creature continues lurking in the surroundings. They take a break, and Jake suggests they split up. The other soldier disagrees and says it's foolish. Doug quickly takes the lead and asks them to just follow him. In the bunker, Trent asks his mother to rest a bit, and she ends up going while they stay alone playing cards. Soon after, Trent makes contact with his father, and Doug tells him they could not find Jenny's parents. Soon, one of the creatures appears. They fire at it and run for one of the base entries. The creature tries to enter, but cannot. Later, we see the two civilians talking in the bathroom. The man introduces himself as Colt, and the woman thanks him for bringing them there, revealing her name is Elaine. Colt asks if Helen is doing okay, and Elaine lies, saying yes. In a moment of nervousness, she lets her bag fall, and while bending down to help, Colt notices that his stolen wallet is among her belongings. Disappointed, Colt says that she only wanted to take advantage of him because he was once a soldier, and then leaves the room. During the night, while everyone sleeps, we see that one of the parasites managed to enter Helen's body. Helen wakes up in the middle of the night and realizes something strange is moving in her arm. She screams, waking Elaine, who immediately asks if she is all right, but Helen begins to convulse. Desperate, Elaine calls for help, and Lori runs to assist her, taking her to the infirmary. Lieutenant Brian appears quickly to provide assistance. Helen screams in pain as Colt tries to help, and Lori questions Elaine about what is happening with her friend. Visibly shaken, Elaine merely states that Helen was already sick before they arrived at the base. Brian examines the woman's arm and observes creatures moving under her skin, and then warns that he will need something to remove it immediately. Trent and Jenny, who were playing cards in the room, hear screaming and rush to investigate. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Brian talks with Colt and tells him what he saw on Helen's arm. Brian warns Colt that the two women are hiding something from them, and Colt agrees with the suspicion. Soon, Trent and Jenny join Brian and Colt and ask what is going on. Brian explains that Helen suffered a seizure and asks if anyone noticed anything strange. They deny, so Brian reveals that she may have been infected by some sort of virus and asks that the young people go to the control room to get something that can combat the infection. Back with the group, they are in an underground tunnel when one of the soldiers asks if there is another exit. Doug confirms that there is, and they decide to follow it. On the way, Doug hears a voice and diverts from the route. Soon, he finds a man who appears to be Jenny's father. Doug says that Jenny is all right, but the man does not respond. When Doug approaches, the man turns and attacks him, revealing that he is controlled by an alien parasite. He spits a substance at Doug, who soon becomes controlled by the parasites as well. Meanwhile, the soldiers keep searching for Doug. They hear noises, then decide to exit through the back entrance of the tunnel and speculate that Doug may be dead. Upon hearing a new sound, they run quickly. When they arrive at the location, they find nothing and consider that Doug may have left without them. Suddenly, the creature appears and kills one of the soldiers, leaving only Jake, who is covered in blood. As the creature crushes the other soldier, Jake doesn't waste time and runs inside. Meanwhile, we see a grim shadow that reveals to be Doug, standing still. In the bunker, the women tend to Helen. She begins to scream in pain, and Elaine loses hope. Lori tries to calm her and asks to cover her with a cloth. Helen asks Elaine to say nothing. Lieutenant Brian arrives and shoots her in the head, explaining that the woman was infected and that everyone there is in danger. While the women cry, Helen's body continues to move. A parasite crawls out of her mouth and jumps quickly into a cold chamber. Lori notices this action and closes the lid, trapping the creature inside. The parasite hits the glass until it breaks and attacks Lori. Meanwhile, Brian and Colt are in another part of the bunker. Brian says they need to get rid of Helen's body. Colt disagrees and asks if there is no other solution. Brian responds that this is the only way. The soldier asks Colt to turn on the incinerator while he goes to get Helen's body. As Colt is on his way to the location, he finds Lori standing in front of him. He calls out to her, but she doesn't respond. Then he begins to apologize, saying he didn't know what Brian intended to do. He approaches slowly, but when she turns around, the parasite in her mouth tries to infect him. In a quick impulse, Colt opens the incinerator door and pushes Lori's face inside, burning the creature. Meanwhile, Elaine appears, nervous, trying to enter a locked room, and on her neck, the mark of the infection is already visible. She hears a noise coming from inside the room and runs scared down the corridors. In the security room, Trent sees his father on the cameras, and an emotional Jenny observes Doug alone, so she tells Trent to go there and open the door for him. Back at the old military base, Jake is hiding, trying to light his flashlight. He hears noises and soon realizes the creature is lurking around. Desperate, he lights a flare he has with him and begins to wave it, trying to scare the creature away. But the flare quickly goes out, and the creature approaches. With nowhere to run, Jake is caught and devoured. Brian rushes back to where Colt is and finds him in shock. Colt frantically says that Lori was infected and tried to kill him. Brian asks Colt to burn Lori's body and then follow him. Then we see Doug walking through the bunker until he reaches the main power box, where he turns everything off, and quickly the entire bunker loses power and all sectors go dark. Colt begins to hear noises in the ceiling, and with his gun and flashlight, he illuminates above him. He follows the sounds until he finds an air duct where he sees a giant parasite. He quickly follows the parasite to a ventilation exit, where he stands guard waiting for the creature, when suddenly, the parasite jumps and attacks him. In the security room, Jenny cries when Brian appears and asks if she is okay. He wants to know where Trent is, and she replies that he went to see Doug, who, according to her, just returned from the old military base. But Brian states that it is impossible for him to have entered, as he is the only one with the access key. Meanwhile, Elaine goes down a staircase and arrives at a dark corridor. She hesitates, but moves forward, and soon further ahead finds Colt's body being devoured by a now evolving parasite. She runs away and stops briefly, but then decides to continue and ascends the stairs. The creature is right behind her, quickly climbing the stairs. Elaine reaches a corridor lit by red lights and runs through it until she stops and sees a man standing. She begins to call out to him, believing it to be Doug, but again, he does not respond. She says they need to get out of there, but when he approaches, he starts spitting out several parasites. Elaine falls to the ground as the monster approaches. She screams for help, but no one appears. Doug and the parasites continue to draw near as the creature is about to attack her. The scene shifts to Brian and Jenny, and he asks her if she has ever used a weapon before. She takes the gun and shows her skills precisely. Seizing the occasion, Brian mentions that Lori was killed because she was infected. Jenny then asks him not to tell Trent the truth about his mother, saying it's better for him to focus on surviving. Jenny takes the opportunity to ask if Helen was responsible for bringing the parasites into the bunker, to which Brian confirms, saying he saw the same parasites moving under her arm. In a dark room, Trent searches for his father. He moves through the darkness, sees a mannequin, and gets startled, but continues forward until he spots a man and believes it to be Doug. He goes to meet the man and hugs him emotionally, but realizes the body is cold, and when he sees his father's deformed face, he recoils in horror. Doug begins to spit out parasites and tries to grab him. Trent runs, grabs a radio, and warns that they need to flee. Doug catches up to him and tries to stop him, but he escapes. The young man goes to another location, but infected Doug finds him and attacks. Fortunately, Jenny and Brian arrive and shoot Doug in the head, saving the boy. They proceed, and while walking through the facility, they hide and avoid being seen by the bizarre creatures. Soon the trio finds a tunnel with the creatures' eggs. Unfortunately, Brian is caught off guard and then devoured by one of them, forcing Jenny and Trent to flee. Already at sea, on a desolate strip, they see a giant portal opening in the sky and a colossal creature emerging from it. Jenny asks for forgiveness for having lied. The two embrace and prepare to die. However, military jets appear and attack the colossal creature, injuring it and causing it to fall exhausted. Finally, another jet launches a nuclear bomb that passes through the portal and explodes on the other side, killing the creature and thus closing that passage for monsters. Fortunately, all are safe, and Jenny and Trent embrace relieved that it has finally ended well.